Howdy everybody, and welcome to World of Warships with Bogatir. And once again, I'm taking my Iowa out for a spin, this time on the hotspot map. Now as far as matchmaking goes, it does not get any better than this, as this is an almost entirely Tier 8 game. And once we load in, clearly we're on hotspot, but at this point I don't realize it. You see, this was my fourth match of the night, and I thought I was on Sea of Fortune because, well, I had been the previous 3 times, so I just assumed I was on that map again. And it took me a little while to realize it, because initially I'm making my plans based on what I like at that map, specifically that I'd aim a little bit towards the western side of the center. It's a good map for getting in close. But it's right about this time that I realize I'm not on Sea of Fortune, I'm on hotspot. The wrong side of hotspot, because like I said in my Bismarck video, this is really not the side that I like to be on if I'm in a battleship, because there's a lot of cover on this side, which is not bad, but it's a lot of the kind of cover that destroyers love. And the sea cap is really, usually that's where you find a ton of enemy destroyers. So I'm thinking about going through the center, and then I decide not to. I'm going to actually post up here, and I'm going to see what happens and where everybody starts to go. Now, there's that enemy Gneisenau, and I just take a quick speculative shot at him. I'm not expecting to get much, it's just a real quick snapshot, and who knows where the guy's going. In fact, he was angled a little bit away from me, so I'm not even sure if I had the range right. Except, boom, 2 penetrations. Now, while I was talking, 2 of the enemy's destroyers showed up, one in A cap, one in B cap, and now here's the Tashkent. And that means this cap only has a single destroyer in it. And our Belfast is coming along on this side as well. So I'm kind of starting to think that I might have a chance, because if there's not a whole lot of torpedoes in the sea cap, a destroyer or a battleship can make it. Now here is an enemy Mogami, and this is usually the kind of behavior you see out of a Myoko, but I guess like little sister, like big sister, and the Mogami fades from view, but oh, ouch, 2 citadels, 2 over penetrations, which means pretty much his entire health pool is gone, and yep, there you go, it has just been annihilated. Now unfortunately our Atago over on that side has been taking it a little roughly, and he does not get his guns around in time to deal with the Mogami and finish it off, and it's the Mogami that gets him. So I take the real quick shots, and look at that dispersion. Even if that Mogami hadn't already almost been dead, that kind of tight patterning out of those 16-inch shells almost certainly would have finished him off. Now our Belfast is moving in, as well as our own Mogami, and our Fletcher is pressing in that cap as well. And the Tashkent has turned around and is getting out of here, because he doesn't want to take us all on by himself. Especially that Belfast with its radar and smoke, and the fact that it is just a broken, ridiculous ship. Sorry. Anyways, at this point, with the sea cap clearing out of the enemy, this is actually not a bad opportunity for me to push on through. So here comes some heavy caliber shell fire, but I'm at a pretty decent angle, so it doesn't really do anything. So there's that Gneisenau over there. And you know what? Since I've already gotten them once, well, why not try for again? So there's the Missouri, there's the other battleships, there's the other enemy Atago. Yeah, they're all kind of beaten feet away from here. So again, I take a speculative shot at that enemy Gneisenau. Now our Belfast is lighting up this North Carolina, and that Tashkent just continues to run away. And 3 more penetrations on that Gneisenau. I had some very good dispersion this game. So our Fletcher and our Belfast are both sitting in here harassing this enemy North Carolina, torching him up. Now the enemy Amagi is actually already coming around the headlands, as well as the enemy Pensacola. It's fairly normal to see this kind of distribution. A lot of battleships will swing wide around sea to specifically avoid all this kind of ridiculousness. And again, I took a quick snapshot against that North Carolina and get almost 10,000 damage out of the volley, which is not an amazing volley, but 10,000 damage is nothing to sneer at. So almost certainly who spotted me is the Amagi spotter plane, but I can't really worry about it because here is a broadside Pensacola. Now, if you'll notice, that Pensacola is also naked, so I have to imagine that whoever this is hasn't really figured things out yet. At tier 7, yeah, you'd kind of think that by tier 7 you would have figured out that you want at least to have your ship with camouflage, and maybe don't broadside battleships when you're in a cruiser. You would think. So, Pensacola's turning in, and yeah, I don't really know why he's doing that. Well, actually, no, I do. One of our other battleships was up there to the north, and he didn't really want to engage him. But in the process, he gives me a beautiful broadside and 1 penetration and 1 over penetration. I usually had good dispersion, but not always. But our torpedoes go ahead and take out the Pensacola. And the Amagi is turning away because he doesn't really want to deal with both me, the cruisers, and some of the other battleships that are over here. This side is way too hot, and he's going to try to turn away. And this is not my finest moment as a battleship captain, specifically this duel with the Amagi. Now, first of all, there's a lot of having the wrong ammunition loaded at the wrong time. So that first AP volley was unavoidable. The guy turned away, and I didn't really know he was going to do that. So I fired it high into the superstructure, did some pretty decent damage, and now I've reloaded with high explosive. Since he's angled, I'm going to hit him with high explosive, see if I can't set some fires, and just do some cheap damage up against his upper works. Our own cruisers are keeping up the fire on the Attigo, which is good because they're going to keep him lit up and hopefully get him to burn his damage control so that we'll be able to get some fires to stick. Now see, here he's firing armor piercing, but I'm angled, so it's really accomplishing nothing. The Iowa's belt is not amazing, but on an angle like that, it's pretty much impenetrable, even at this range. Now, here's where I messed up. This guy's getting close to the map border. He's going to have to turn. What I should have done is load armor piercing and wait for him to get fully into the turn. Now, that fire, since I'm fairly certain that he's already damage controlled, that fire is going to stick and tick away with some pretty good damage. But if I had had armor piercing loaded, I might have been able to end the engagement right there. So a little bit more patience rather than emptying the barrels every time they're loaded would have served me well. Now he's turning and he's going to come in towards me, and I'm expecting him to come roughly bow on. But I'd expected the turn to go quicker. Again, I could have had armor piercing loaded and done a lot more than 3,000 damage. So not great on my ammunition juggling at that point, especially since now I'm reloading with armor piercing, but there he's angled. And again, I just don't have much of a chance of penetrating his belt at that angle, even at this range. I'll probably do some damage, but it's not going to be anything amazing. So what I decided to do is aim a little bit high to try to send the shells into his main battery. And I actually do manage to get it. Probably because his guns were turned to the side, I managed to penetrate the cheeks since they were relatively flat to me. Now, here's where I make my big mistake. This is not the way you want to brawl, because what I've done is I've fixated on my target. You see, battleship main gun turrets cannot rotate very quickly, and at this shorter range, my gun turrets literally cannot keep up with how quickly he's coming by me. So even though I've got those front 2 turrets are all loaded with armor piercing, I cannot get a shot at this guy. So we've passed at broadside at not even 1.5 kilometers, and I was not able to finish this guy. So now our secondary batteries are duking it out, not accomplishing much, but now he's trying to get his guns, he's turning the ship to try to accelerate the rate his guns are getting around. Now here's kind of a trick. By aiming towards the, well, let me back up. The point where you actually zoom in and view, and the targeting zoom in, is about amidships, and that means you are about 75 meters in front of the gun turret. Now what that means for aiming at short range is, while the angle from my viewpoint to the Amagi was 45 degrees, 50 degrees, by pulling my point of aim towards the front of the ship, I was able to get my rear gun turret so that the guns were almost perpendicular to the Amagi. So while from my viewpoint I was about 45 degrees into the Amagi, because I shifted my aim point forward on the ship, my guns were able to fire pretty much into the flat broadside of the ship, which at that range guarantees penetrations, guarantees that that Amagi is dead. So while my initial pass was just incredibly tomato, that trick right there is something that you need to remember when you're dealing with battleships, and honestly any large ship is short range. The distance from your point of view to the point where your guns are firing can be significant enough that at short range, less than 2 kilometers, it can make quite a bit of difference. So by this point, the A side has completely fallen apart. All our push into B is gone. It's really just the guys that went towards C that are still alive, along with one of our destroyers and a few other odds and ends. So at this, I was expecting the Missouri to come around this side of the island, and I had my guns turned to be ready for him, but he's not showing up, which is a little bit surprising. Now, thankfully, my surface detection radius is only about 14.1 kilometers, which means I'm still undetected. Now, if they've been paying any attention to the map, they probably know I'm coming, but they don't have a good beat on me just yet. So I'm going to turn more towards the B cap, and as I decide to make that turn, there's the Missouri. Now, 12.8 kilometers, that's not a very far shot, but the Missouri is a fast battleship, and I don't really give it enough lead. Because while it's not too bad, it hits towards the rear of the Citadel, it's not as good as straddling the ship right under the superstructure. So, 9,000 damage, not bad, but not fantastic. Now, here's where you have to start making some decisions. I have got no less than 4 enemy battleships in front of me, and so the real question is, where do I want to point my bow? If you're only fighting against one enemy battleship or you're at like 20 plus kilometers, it's usually pretty simple. You turn your bow straight onto them. Oh, Citadel on that North Carolina, which gives me the high caliber. At this point, I actually checked my damage and was shocked at how high my damage was. But getting back to armor angling, since at very long range, you can just turn your bow onto them and trust in the angle of your foreplating to just auto-ricochet the incoming shells. But at this range, I don't have that luxury. So I'm trying to angle more towards the North Carolinas so that the North Carolinas and the Gneisenau's are all angled okay against me. The angle is not fantastic against this Missouri, but that's kind of the trade-off. You can't perfectly angle against everybody, so you have to decide what's your biggest threat and angle for those. Now, this Missouri is turning away from me and running, which means I've got zero hope of penetrating him. So instead, I take shots at this North Carolina, who is giving me the nice flat broadside of the ship, which is entirely the wrong way to drive a North Carolina. The North Carolina's belt is not phenomenally thick, but it's thick enough provided that you master your angling. And, okay, by tier 8, you should understand how to angle your battleship. Now, this Benson is trying to put some shots in on me, trying to light me up on fire. Not entirely sure why he's focused on me, but whatever. So, he's trying to light me up, and I really don't care because I still have another heal, 3 heals actually, as well as my damage control consumables, so I don't really care. Now, there's that Gneisenau, but he's in a turn and 23 kilometers away, which means there's virtually no chance that I'd actually be able to hit him. Now, with that Benson having focused on me, I have to imagine that he probably sent torpedoes my way, so I send my spotter plane up to try to give me a little warning ahead of time. Now, that North Carolina is coming in here, and I actually take from the Missouri. Yeah, somehow he managed to hit and incapacitate my rear turret. So I immediately repair that. I hit my damage repair consumable, and I also got the Confederate award with that last volley against North Carolina. Now here is, I may have screwed up the brawl against the Amagi, but I do not against this Missouri. Yeah, he never had any real prayer of doing anything with that volley. Should have held on to it. Now he's in the middle of turning in. So, take a real quick shot because he's still a good angle to me. And, do a little bit of damage, whatever. Not a big deal. Now, here's the first thing with these engagements. Which side are we going to pass on? Because if you could juke and have the other guy's turrets turn in the wrong direction, you'd get a free pass to do a ton of damage. Again, shots against my angled side, never going to hit. So now I'm hoping to bring him down this side of my ship. And I zoom in and I see his turrets. Now initially I'm concerned that he may have decided to just try to run into me. I mean literally to just crash into me and take me out that way. But he's not. He's going for the pass. So what I do is I start to turn my turrets. See, he fired into my angled side and he only did 3,500 damage, which in a close pass brawl like this is nothing. As you can see, I've turned to try to pre-aim my turrets, get them rotated around. They're reloading, just about reloaded. Everything's aimed, and boom! That's how you do it properly. 3 citadels and a full penetration, and I just completely nuked him. They may have lowered the Iowa and the Missouri citadels, but at that shorter range, it doesn't really matter. And that right there is what I live for. That is why I drive battleships. I don't care anything about gunnery at long range. I live to drive battleships into enemy battleships, get the range under 10 kilometers, and just duke it out at knife fighting range. I love it. That's the only reason I drive battleships, is just to get that, to have that happen. And I had it happen twice in one game. Admittedly, I completely screwed the first one up, but the second one was perfect. So now things have actually turned around, because for a minute there we were outnumbered 4-2, but with that Missouri out of the game, it's now only 2-3, and me and the remaining North Carolina are moving in towards the B cap. Now we have to kill the enemy ships. There's no way we're going to be able to secure A and secure B and win this on points. We have to kill the enemy ships. So here's the Gneisenau, now, and me and we're giving him the same problem that I had a few minutes ago. Where does he point the bow of the ship? How does he angle? His solution is initially to try to split the difference, but the problem is there's an island, and he would ground himself if he kept on that course. So he shoals it out, points his bow towards the North Carolina, and as a consequence gives me his broadside, which I proceed to do nothing with. But that North Carolina plays this perfectly. The Gneisenau is bow on to him, so he's not going to be able to accomplish anything, so he turns his attention to the Otago and nukes him. So now it is 2-on-2, and that enemy destroyer has 3 kills, so he is no joke. So, but I'm very nervous, because that destroyer, there he is, he popped up. Sure enough, he had to be around here somewhere. Lob some shots in over the headlands, and yeah, still not finding those hits that I need. But there's that Kagero. I assume that his torpedoes are out, but hey, there you go. They went after the North Carolina, and the North Carolina again shifted his fire and took out the Kagero. But the Kagero got off his torpedoes, 1 hit on me, but it doesn't matter, because as my guns swing around, flip the shots over the island, and boom, that is a dead Gneisenau. So let's take a look at those results. First off, victory, obviously, and almost 250,000 damage, 547 damage away from 250,000. This is actually my highest damaging game of all time, which, okay, that's why it's here. I got the Confederate, High Caliber, Dreadnought, and Devastating Strike for what I did to that Mogami. Just absolutely annihilated him. 83 main battery hits, shot down an airplane, didn't even realize I'd done that, and 4 kills. Obviously, finished top of my team with 2,461 XP, and there's that North Carolina, the dead Pirate Roberts, who did a fantastic job helping finish that game out. We got 8 kills out of 12 there at the end of the game, me and him. He did a fantastic job. Now, moving along to the results screen, it speaks for itself, and almost all the damage that I did to that Missouri came in that final volley. Hammered that Missouri, did quite a bit of damage to the Amagi, almost as much damage to the Mogami, hammered on that Gneisenau, North Carolina, Pensacola, and another North Carolina. Just a ton of damage laid out over the entirety of the enemy team. And taking a look at the cash, made a nice profit and a ton of XP for my captain and the ship. There we go. The highest damage game I have yet had. And I gotta tell you, I am starting to love my Iowa. This has been Bogatir. I'll catch you next time.